Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all about fixing it and others up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. Well, this week does raise some new complications, which I'll get to a little later in the episode. But I did get up to Genoa and I did get to start looking at getting some work done on Geordie because I think I've sourced wood and I have sourced the Land Rover parts. So we're back in gear. But I did mention that there was a complication. Oh, yes. And well, welcome back to wet and cold and dreary Genoa Bay. But most importantly, welcome back to MV Geordie. Now, for those of you who have joined the show recently, I opened the show saying, well, I live on this motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia. But in fact, I live on this motor cruiser currently here in a boat shed in Genoa Bay, British Columbia. And well, that may seem a little confusing, but yes, I have two wooden boats. This, however, is my flagship. This is my home. This is my forever boat. Home is more of a cottage. So Geordie's in the shed because it was going to receive an awful lot of work this winter, and you may have noticed if you've been watching the last few episodes, getting the wood for those pretty major projects is getting a bit difficult. So let me elaborate on that just briefly. All the mahogany that you see on the outside of the boat is originally Honduran mahogany, and it's original to the boat, and it's lovely stuff. Now, the only problem is it's in really, really bad shape, as many wooden boats of this era are. And I did an episode some time ago discussing it. I won't go on about it again. So my plan is to completely replace all of the visible mahogany outside of the boat, which in fact would include the tow and rub rail, which had been redone in teak at some point, and do that all again in sapele mahogany. The problem is finding good quality stuff, which I've elaborated on. Let's not go any further. Now, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get that wood anytime soon, I do need to stay productive. Well, another big part of the project for this winter was to replace all the fiberglass, which would be the cabin tops and the decks. And they're all in pretty rough shape. And we've come right to about the most miserable section on the whole boat. You can see for quite a few years I've been dealing with this opening problem here with Gorilla Tape and goo, and this corner here is by far the most disgusting, embarrassing corner of the boat. So I think this is where we should start. So my point is, to cut it short, I know I have to do the fiberglass work, regardless of whether I'm doing the cabin sides this year. So let's get started on that. And to get started on this, I gotta get the stanchions off. To get the stanchions off, I gotta take this off. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, I'll give you a quick tour before it gets disassembled. In my version of liveaboard cruising, a canopy for the cockpit is absolutely essential. It's for a few reasons. One, in summer, it gets ridiculously hot and you need some shade. But also all through the winter, as you can hear, it's pouring rain. Well, if we were outside, the entire cockpit would be awash with rain, and as you come in and come out, it's just miserable. So you need some kind of vestibule, and well, this created that. The only problem is, how do we get up onto the bridge deck? For those of you who've been not watching the show for a while, this is this upper deck that I quite enjoy in the summer. Well, it's simply putting this on a couple of pneumatic cylinders so that it'll just tip up, and now I can comfortably walk up to the rather comfortable and pleasant upper bridge deck on MV Geordie. If you're not familiar with what canvas I've used for these two canopies over the last several years, it's just hardware store plastic back painter's drop cloths at about $24 a piece. They last a couple of seasons. This one was on a season or two too long. Yeah. All right, so if you've been following the show for a while, you might remember that Geordie used to have a nice big stainless steel bow pulpit on it, which I don't know how effective that really is in a motor cruiser, but anyway, I want to relieve Geordie of all the stainless steel that was added to it, what I feel inappropriately. So these stanchions have long since been aggravating me, but they've been providing a very handy purpose. So to get to the fiberglass, they obviously have to come off, and you can be sure they're not going back on. So they're held on with stainless steel machine screws with standard heads. Machine screws are like screws, except they're not wood screws, they're like a bolt. In other words, there's a nut on the bottom underneath here. And those nuts are buried within the structure and the covering of the overheads below. I am not taking all the overheads off to get at the nuts of these. So you can sometimes get lucky if the nut has been sucked up into some wood, and in fact it's being held at that point. So you can sometimes just... That was the one remaining standard screw drive bit that I have. And it had been stuck in this socket so that I could do this expediently. And now it's at the bottom of the ocean. So for those of you who are keeping track, one tape measure, one Olfa knife, one hand clamp, and one screwdriver drive bit. Let's see what I can find. Okay, I found something that might help me out. Okay, let's see if we can get lucky with a couple of these. That one's not coming. That one's not coming. Okay, so one for three is not so bad. So you can see that that worked its way out of the nut. The other two are going to have to come off the ugly way. And that's going to involve safety glasses. One, two. You'll see where the cutoff wheel has to be flat, and the nut here forces me a bit low, so I'm nicking the cabin top. Big deal, all this fiberglass is getting replaced. Ooh, 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 ooh. All right, folks, this is where it gets real. This is, yeah, this is a little bit of a, yeah, I don't even know what to call this. It's a mess is what it is. You know what's really gross about this? This is still wet, and the boat's been in the shed for 4 months. Okay, I think what's distressing me the most here is not the mess here. I was prepared to deal with this. So the way this boat is made, the main part of the cabin top is made out of plywood, and then at this sharp curve here, it's made out of little bits of slats that are, you know, glued together into a curve, and that's fine. That would be pretty much straightforward to repair. What's really bothering me is the fiberglass is not releasing from the plywood. So I'm ripping up the top veneer of the plywood getting this off, which means it's going to be very difficult to remove this fiberglass. In other words, it's well bonded to the plywood, which I didn't want. I was hoping I could peel the whole thing off in a big sheet. And that's going to change the way the repair of the cabin top works. So we're getting into something resembling reasonable plywood here, except I'm taking the top veneer off. I'm hoping in a bit I can get to the point where it's just the fiberglass that's coming off. Ugh. Well, my initial reaction is that it looks like it's going to be very slow getting the fiberglass off the top of the boat. And well, there's a lot of boat. And it's all got to come off. So I hope I don't have to strip it all with heat. That would take a very, very long time. Okay, so if we look a little more closely here, what we have, it looks like some earlier repair. Looks like Douglas fir. Maybe that's original, but somehow I doubt it. This looks like something a little yellower, maybe yellow cedar, who knows. And then this is obviously original, or certainly in very, very bad condition. My gosh. Okay, so this is right in the middle of the cabin top for the aft cabin, and I'm going to try and remove a patch of whatever this is here because I want to find out what it is. Okay, as far as I can tell, it's the same thing. It's perhaps the original canvas or new canvas or something, simply with a lot of paint, and the top coat is this sort of rubbery deck paint stuff. It's going to be a lot of work to get this off. A lot. Okay, because I need to know, I'm also going to do a little exploratory surgery down in the side decks here to see what this is. Well, unless I'm completely incompetent, that's not fiberglass. It just isn't. So, the side decks, like this strip I took off the edge here, there's no fiberglass in there either. Nope. Okay, so this has gone from a little corner repair here to something that I think is going to be much more severe. Because of the difficulty of getting whatever it is on this cabin top off, I think it's going to be less work to take the circular saw and slice this roof into little sections between the deck beams and pull all the plywood and junk and everything off the deck beams and completely rebuild this cabin top with plywood to here, and then I'll use some yellow cedar with nice little beveled edges to build the curved edge. I know this whole section to here has to be replaced. Gosh knows what the other side is like. Gosh knows what the house cabin is like. So I have an awful lot to consider here. It's not so much really the work, which although daunting, doesn't really bother me. Part of the problem is this boat doesn't even really fit in this shed. So flipping it end for end to try and do a dry end at certain times, possible, but gets a bit complicated. Trying to live aboard while the entire cabin top is off gets a little complicated. Making sure I don't end up in a situation where I've ruined the boat and can't carry on for one reason or another gets a bit complicated. I have to vacate this shed June 1st, and it's late January. Starting to get a bit complicated. Any good advice? If you have any good ideas how to get whatever the heck is on this cabin top off without sitting there for 3 or 4 weeks with a heat gun, flamethrower, I don't know. Sometimes those electric radiant heaters might help out. I don't know. Well, hello there and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Bourbon of the Week, coming to you this week from the very cozy wheelhouse of MV Poem here in the pouring rain in Victoria. Okay, I said bourbon. That's because, yes, this is a bourbon of the week, and this is Ocean from Jefferson's. And let me tell you, this was a gift from a very fine fellow, Michael Wilcox. Some of you will remember the name. He is also the very kind fellow who's become a good friend that sent me the fiddle not too long ago, and he's given me a lot of good advice on things, including got me started on doing the leaded glass work. Anyway, this is a favorite of his, and he arranged for me to have a bottle, and Jefferson's Ocean is aged at sea. In fact, it's voyage number 28, and it tells me all about it in this, how this bottle aged as it traversed the oceans of the world. It's a very, very, very interesting story and makes for a very lovely bourbon. I'm gonna have a little splash on ice for you this afternoon, or with you anyway. I had the first taste of it yesterday with Michael on Zoom. So, to you, Michael, and to all of you. I can't say I know much about bourbon, but I know what I like, and I like this. Okay, let's get down to work. That is very, very pleasant this afternoon in the rain. Winner of last week's Travels with Geordie t-shirt is Marcus Weber, 5561. Get a hold of me, Marcus, and you've won yourself a Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Congratulations. Buttery, absolutely buttery. I'd like to thank two new Patreons that came on in the last little while, and they are Henri, as well as Jody Spraggins. Thank you ever so much to both of you. I'm so very, very grateful. Cheers. And off the Amazon wish list, which has been a real treat, this fabulous doorknob. Now, this may look familiar to some of you because I actually got one of these some years ago for the cabin door board Geordie, although it was the square faceplate version of this. This is a round version, and I really wanted to get one of these because I think it'll be perfect for a couple things on Poem, but most notably for the side doors. The side door latches that are on are very, very vulnerable and in rather poor shape, and really don't work very well at all. Maybe I can do a little cutaway for you. But anyway, these are solid brass, very nicely made. They're actually screen door hardware, and I'll put a link down below in the description because I think they're a really nice product. They're not cheap, that's why I'm so grateful. It was a gift, and it was a gift from Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson, imagine that. I hope you didn't have to sell your soul at the crossroads for these. Anyway, if you don't get the inside joke, Robert Johnson was a fabulous blues musician that apparently sold his soul to the devil to become that fabulous blues musician. Anyway, thank you again ever so much, Robert. I'm very grateful for that, and I look forward to trying them out in the doors to see if they work as well as I expect they will. Now, I have to talk about fiberglass for a little bit, and the whole process of trying to take apart the cabin top. I got a little overwhelmed and a bit daunting while I was up in Genoa. I didn't have very much time, and I had to figure out how I'm moving forward. The cabin top is obviously one way or another a lot more work than I'd hoped, which is going to change the timing on doing the cabin sides at all this season. And that's daunting because that means maybe moving the cabin sides project a whole year into the future, which just seems amazing. But anyway, the cabin top process does have me a little perplexed. I don't know how much damage there really is. There's so many patches even in the plywood. That's why I was sort of tempted to rip the whole thing off and start again. But on second thought, that may be just too much. I don't want to go into it too much here, but what I do want to ask you, I can't tell if that's fiberglass at all. It makes a slight tearing sound when I pull it apart, but I think it's just the canvas. I've pulled fiberglass off things more than a few times, including the cabin top of MV Zephyrs, and it's distinctive. And it has all the little hairy ends of fiberglass. Anyway, that's enough of that. As a result, the Travels with Geordie word of the week this week is fiberglass. So if you'd like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, simply use the word fiberglass in some sort of informative, helping me out, figure out what's going on with the boat way, and I will pick at random over the next week or so worth of comments that are very helpful in figuring out what the heck I'm going to do about the top of the boat. And if I pick you, you've won yourself a well-deserved Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Cheers, see you next week.